I suppose anyone who's been in church any length of time, ever been to vacation Bible school or Sunday school as a kid, has heard that story. Most of us have heard it a great many times. And we've referred to the story probably sometimes in our life in talking about Mary and Martha. The story's been told a lot of different ways, with a lot of different intentions by telling the story, wanting to illustrate something. And it's an important story. It's sort of the appendage to a great chapter in Luke where we get the parable of the Good Samaritan and the mission of the 70, and it sort of concludes that. And we know where Jesus was. He was in Bethany, a place where Mary, Martha, and Lazarus lived together. From John's Gospel, we can learn that during the last phase of his ministry, Jesus was in and out in Jerusalem, and Bethany was a place where he often stayed with his friends, Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. You know that after this story took place, there's another famous story that John tells us about Lazarus who died, and Jesus raised him from the dead. So these were people that Jesus knew and knew well, and they knew Jesus. They were friends of his. And I suppose that even though they didn't follow him from place to place like the 12 did, they still were as close to Jesus as anybody else ever was. They were friends of his. Jesus loved them. They loved Jesus. And whenever he came into their home, into their village, he was welcomed by Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. When I think about Mary, I think about my grandmother. My grandmother on Mom's side, they were farmers. They lived down in the Mississippi Delta. And my grandfather, I've told you before, was a strict Baptist who didn't believe in working on Sunday, and work was whatever he didn't want you to do on Sunday, like fishing or anything else. If it came to my grandmother fixing a huge feast for the family that gathered there on Sunday afternoon, that wasn't work. If everybody decided that they wanted homemade ice cream in the afternoon, I suppose that wasn't work either. And back then, it wasn't an electric one. It was one of those hand crank ones. And the grandkids always had the task of cranking. And if you've ever had to crank up some frozen ice cream in the ice cream maker, you know that's not easy. As it gets colder and colder and freezes more, it gets harder and harder to turn. But we loved it. And I suppose that wasn't work. And on those Sundays when the family would gather, all of us together, at my grandmother's, there was a feast. I'm telling you, you have never eaten like you could eat there. Fried chicken, fried in real foot lard. Much better than canola oil or olive oil or anything like that. Might not be healthy, but it sure is better. In addition to that, there would be another main entree, something like roast beef and potatoes and gravy all mixed in together. And the veggies that came along with it, the homegrown ones, purple hull peas, speckled butter beans, and her cream corn. She made it out of field corn rather than sweet corn. And I wish to goodness that I could repeat the way she did it, because I could eat that stuff until I was literally sick at my stomach in the afternoon. It was a feast. I'm telling you, heaven's got nothing on the kind of feast that you could have at my grandmother's house. It was good food. But on those days, she wouldn't go to church because she had to get everything ready. It was their way, the way of so many people like them. It was hospitality. And make no mistake, hospitality is at the core of what Christianity is in lived practice. We are to be a hospitable people. Martha was like that. She was like my grandmother. If there wasn't enough food, she would have been shamed. There was always more than enough food, but she fixed that because she didn't want anyone to go away without something good to eat, go away hungry. And there was always dessert of 1 or 2 or 3 different kinds. And it was always wonderful food. And if you got up from that table still hungry, it was your fault. I never did. You would be filled and satisfied, so much so that a nap in the afternoon was almost inevitable. It was a feast. And it was all because my grandmother was the kind of person who wanted everything to be good and perfect for her family and the friends that gathered there. That's exactly the way Martha was. Martha wanted to make things good. Whenever Jesus came, one of the most important people in her life, whenever Jesus came to town, she wanted a feast. Who knows how many people showed up? We know the 12 were there. Jesus and probably some others that traveled with him or that knew him in the village and came. So you can imagine that when they gathered for a dinner at Martha's house, that was a hard task that she had to see to. Everything had to be prepared. Everything had to be perfect. She wanted Jesus to feel welcome. She wanted others to feel welcome. Hospitality was very important to her. And there she was going about her task, doing the things that she did, and she was so busy that she got flustered that her sister, Mary, hadn't helped her. Now, of course, in that day, just like in the day when we used to go to my grandmother's, there were roles that people played, and it was up to the woman of the house to make sure that the food was prepared and set and everything was in its place for people to be guests there, that people to feel welcome there. And Martha was carried away with the things that she had to do, and she got mad because Mary was in there with the menfolk who were sitting around listening to the things that Jesus had to say. And what Martha wanted Jesus to do is to rebuke Mary and say, Mary, you need to go help Martha out because dinner time is getting close and people are going to be hungry. Instead, he gently rebuked Martha. And he said, Martha, Martha, you're so distracted by things. You're so caught up in what you're doing and making sure that everything meets the standard that you have for it and all your guests are taken care of, that you don't understand that even as important as these things are, they're not more important than what Mary is doing with us today. They're less important. Mary was in the midst of the menfolk, listening to what Jesus had to say, talking, questioning, interacting, trying to understand further the mission of Jesus as he explained it to them. And Jesus said to her gently, Martha, you're the one that is distracted, not Mary. Mary is doing the better thing. She's here learning of me. Now, you got to wonder, I guess you don't have to wonder because the answer is pretty obvious. Why was this story included in the gospel accounts? Now, I've said many times, if there's a story in the gospels, one of the gospels or in all of them, there's a reason for it. Not every story that could have been told about Jesus was included in the gospel accounts. That they're synoptic, they're pictures of the ministry of Jesus. The stories that are there for a reason. They're remembered for a reason. And so this simple story here is in Luke's gospel for a reason. Luke wanted to convey something important through this story. Something important about our life of faith. A simple story about Martha. Martha doing the very important work of hospitality. Making sure her guests were comfortable. Making sure that they were filled. Carrying on being so busy that in being hospitable, she missed the opportunity to enjoy that hospitality herself. She was so busy. And I think back, when I think about this, I think back again to my grandmother, who was never allowed to sit at the table with the rest of the family and eat because she was too busy making sure everybody else had enough. And so it wouldn't be until the very, very end, when only a few hangers-on were still at the table, that she would come in and eat. But that's what she thought she was supposed to do. That's what Martha thought she was supposed to do. And Jesus rebuked her. And if there's ever a story in the Gospels, I think this is one of the important ones that we ought to pay attention to. Because if ever there's a situation similar to what happened in this story, it is today in the church. We are so distracted, carried away by many things, carried away by this or that, or worried about something else, when what we really need is to stop being distracted and sit at the feet of Jesus and hear what he has to say. The great Dietrich Bonhoeffer talked about what he called cheap grace. He said cheap grace is the grace that looks good, but it doesn't require anything of you. It doesn't make any demands upon you. It's there for the taking, and you can take all you want, and you don't have to do anything in return. And he said there really is no such grace as cheap grace. I've called it something similar in my own ministry over the years, that the church is sometimes filled with what I call functional atheists. Profess God, profess all the things in the creed, but then be unchanged by it all. Do all the things in form that are supposed to be done. Say all the words and the incantations that are supposed to be stated, and yet it doesn't make any difference in your day-to-day life. Functional atheism. You believe, but it doesn't matter. Sometimes we're just like Martha. We get so distracted, so carried away by many things, that we forget the only thing that matters. We worry about this or we worry about that. We want this or we want that. We're filled with people who want their preferences met, filled with people who want things to be in line with the way they want them. We're filled with people that want the church to be like a shopping mall where you can be a consumer and pull this or that or whatever it is you want off the shelf and take it with you, but unchanged by the reality of it. Martha got rebuked. Jesus rebuked her. It wasn't a hard rebuke, it was a soft one. He simply reminded her, you're carried away by so many things that don't matter. What really matters is for you to sit at my feet like Mary did and learn of me. Now, folks, the real task of our discipleship is simply that, to sit at the feet of Jesus and learn of him. That's it. To draw closer to him and become like him. What do you think Jesus would have to say to some of us in the church today? We complain about this, or we complain because we're doing this, or complain that we're not doing that. What do you think Jesus would say to that? You're distracted by a great many things when there's really only need of one thing, and that is for you to learn of me. I've been distracted many times. I'm sure I'll be distracted again in my life. I know that you have too. We all have. But the truth is, the only really important thing that we should be about as people, the people of God, the church, is to learn of Jesus. And if we do that, then we will start to experience the calls that Jesus has for us. We will want to be servants. Not like Martha, but servants who conform to Jesus in our living. What are the things that distract you today? What are the things that have pulled on your mind and your spirit that keep you from sitting at the feet of Jesus and learning of him and being transformed in your living to be like him? I suppose, in my opinion, there's no greater question that we have to answer for ourselves than that. Are we distracted by a great many things? Or are we at Jesus' feet, listening like Mary? In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, amen.